I cannot stand how the news has been dogging Gen Z and calling them lazy for not wanting to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of their lives. Let me put it in perspective for everybody who's a little confused here,
Feels
okay?
like she's
I work
yelling at me.
5 days out of the week, 40 hours a week, okay? I do not make enough to live on my own. I would not make enough to pay rent, water, electric, and eat. All by myself. I would not be capable of doing that. 20 years ago when you were getting started, you could live on your own. 20 years ago when you first started, you were able to do everything that I am now struggling to do. Let me add another perspective here. You've been working for 20 years. You have 20 years of working experience behind your belt. You have 20 years of experience in a career that has allowed you to gain raises, to get more money, to profit you in an economy that you created. You can sit here and you can call Gen Z lazy all you want, but I've been working my tail end off just to barely make it by. And respectfully, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. I don't want to work my tail end off, wasting all of my life working just to barely be able to pay my bills. And that is what you created, not Gen Z. We're just here getting started. You've been doing it for the last 20 years. You tell me how it got ruined. We can sit here and we can call Gen Z lazy all you want, but you let the economy turn into what it did. You let it all run to hell. And now it's Gen Z's fault because we don't want to work to fix your mistakes.
All right, I agree with most things, but there's one thing I definitely don't agree with. So first of all, should we call an entire generation lazy? No, you can't throw a blanket statement. So is all Gen Z lazy? That's not a fair assumption. Probably like every generation, you have lazy people and you have people who are a little bit more motivated or potentially very motivated. So I don't know about calling all Gen Z lazy. So don't agree necessarily with that, and I don't think anyone should do it. Her statement of the current, I guess, like older group, really, we'll just put it on the politicians because they're the people who are in charge of making these decisions. Really, since 2008, we've prompted serious inflation. That's what happens when you print to the tune of, what was it, $8.9 trillion? When you flood the money supply like that, of course there's going to be horrific inflation. And when prices and like for working don't keep appreciating at the same rate, well, the net difference is even worse off. So what she was saying, and we hear this all the time of the appreciation of things like college, of, yeah, all of a sudden that goes up and pay's going up as well, but not at the same rate. So it's not the same ratio. Things on a relative basis are becoming more expensive. Then she really dove into the concept of like housing and living by yourself. And to me, this was one of the most interesting like measurements. Every year, every decade, whatever, however time frame you want to look at it, you could always break down what is the average income, the median income, versus the percentage of that being spent on housing. For a lot of our time, we kind of hover around 18 to 20%. That is kind of what it's about. You spend about a fifth of your income on housing. Recently, that spiked closer to 40%, as in the ratio of pay and then really what you're spending on housing, whether it's rent or your mortgages, anything like that, that's actually doubled. So that's bad. So she does bring up a fair point that even though we're getting paid more, the relative rate we're paying for everything else is more expensive. The one thing that I disagree with is when she's saying, just because I work 40 hours, I should be able to live. I don't agree with that at all. We have very, I guess, different skill sets within the job force, within the labor force, and we also have just very different jobs. Your pay is going to be very much associated with, very much correlated with high supply, low demand, high demand, low supply, that type of a thing. Obviously, not everyone out there is going to be a neurosurgeon, so there's lower supply. We have a certain demand, it'll get paid accordingly. Now, obviously, on other things where there's a high supply and a low demand, well, they're not going to be paid as much. I am a big believer that there are certain jobs within the US economy that you're not meant to survive on. I think many jobs are more so thought of as like, oh, this is like a training wheels job so you can learn what it's like to be a true professional within the US economy. I don't really know what she did. I saw that she was wearing a Walmart thing, and at Walmart, there's all levels. There's people at Walmart making billions, and then there's people all the way down making like minimum wage. But this concept of being able to survive on minimum wage, I don't agree with it, because not everyone getting paid minimum wage is like, you're learning, you're not really doing anything. You're kind of like learning how to be in, like, I guess, America, the job force. So like that lower end, like I think back when I was in high school, the jobs that I had, I wasn't worth minimum wage. I barely knew what I was doing. Now, obviously, if you are getting paid minimum wage and you're paying for kids and rent, that's extraordinarily difficult. But this just concept that just because you're working, you like automatically should be able to pay for anything. I don't agree with that, because sometimes we have low demand, high supply jobs that just the market's not going to price it that way. And then vice versa, you could get a job that it takes a very high skill set, there's low supply, super high demand, and you're going to make a ton of money. So I don't think it's fair on any of this just to throw a general blanket. I think it has to be almost taken case by case by case. And I think it is a fair point that some jobs, America and globally, I think should be thought of as like, no, this is kind of a training job where you're taking like whatever, a teenager, and you're trying to teach them how to properly act and be within the workforce. And that's not necessarily like worth as much as like a director, a manager, a president. I just don't see it that way.